We are in the middle of Torah Yud Zayin and Likutey Moharan, called VaYehi hem Merikim sakehem, and we are in middle of which part? We are in middle of part 8 in this Torah. And Rabbi Nachman in this Torah is explaining to us, he's explaining to us how we celebrate the kingship of Hashem. This Torah is all about celebrating the kingship of Hashem, celebrating Hashem as king. And when we celebrate Hashem as king, this is comparable to the coronation day of a king or the birthday of a king. And the reason why celebrating Hashem of a king as king is also called the birthday of a king is because the whole essence of a king, the aspect of his kingship, of being called what's called melech, en melech belo am, there is no king without a nation. It's all dependent on the nation. And so on the day that the nation celebrates the king as king, that's the day that the king is born. Okay, because he is not a king unless the nation recognizes him as king and accepts him as their king. And to the extent that they do accept him as their king, that's when he becomes king. And so the day that we celebrate the kingship of the king as a king, right? That's the day that he is becoming king. That's the coronation of the king, and it's also the birthday of the king. And in the same way, on that day, so the day that the king is born, therefore, is the day that the nation who accepts the king upon themselves as their king, on the day that they are born. And so that's really, if you want to point to one day of the year that this is the most experience in the greatest way, that's Rosh Hashanah. It's every day of the year. Because as we know in the Kavanot, according to Kabbalah, with the process that we are going through the prayers on Rosh Hashanah, is really something that we're going through every day of the year in Shachrit, every morning. But when you look at the whole year as a system, as one system, then there is also the point in that system that is the source for that tikkun, for that light in every cell, of that system, in every tiny particle of that system. And so that's why even though you go through the process of accepting Hashem as your king every morning during Shachrit, during the morning prayers, and celebrating Hashem as your king, every morning you do this process. The whole process that you see in the Kavanot on Rosh Hashanah is done every morning. Not just what is done on Rosh Hashanah, what is done from Rosh Hashanah until the end of Sukkot is done every morning in davening, in the prayer. But when you look at the whole year as a system unto itself, so there must be a source, a point within the year, a day within the year that is the soul of that for the whole year. And so that's all about celebrating Hashem as a king, as our king. And that's why Rosh Hashanah is also, it's the day that we are born. And the day that we are born, the subjects of Hashem, the nation of Hashem that celebrates Hashem as our king, is also the day that, so to speak, the Malchut is born. The Malchut of Hashem, the coronation of the king, the birthday of the king and the coronation of the king is one and the same. And that's the day that we experience tremendous awe. Okay, when the king is celebrated as king by his nation, and the king is shown, comes out, and there's a parade, and there's all of the celebrations surrounding him. People really see what it means to be a king. They see the royalty with their own eyes. There's a tremendous awe upon the nation, tremendous fear, a tremendous awe, of what does it mean, this royalty, what does it mean, this king, what does it mean to be a king. They see it in front of them, they experience it. And that's comparable to the awe, Rabbi Nachman says, is the awe that is experienced when someone is wearing tefillin. When the king prides himself with his nation, that's what's happening during this celebration of the king as king, the kingship of the king. He's priding himself with his nation, because this is the reason why he created the whole universe, was for his nation. And so when he's celebrating, when he is enjoying the celebrations by priding himself with his nation that is celebrating his kingship, there's a tremendous awe that is felt among the nation of the greatness, the splendor, the glory of the king. And so that is really the din, the judgment energy of Rosh Hashanah, is that awe. So if that yira, if that judgment energy is experienced in connection to Hashem, and this is a concept we spoke about in the previous Torahs, that when we take the fear energy, which is the judgment energy, it's called the sphere of Gevura, the aspect of din, and we are experiencing it, instead of experiencing it as a disconnected fear, we are connecting it to Hashem and experiencing it as awe of the greatness of Hashem, the splendor of the King of the world, not just the King of the world, the King of the universe. The King of the universe, as great as well, we don't know any end to the universe. As great and as expansive as the universe is, the physical universe, that's nothing compared to all of the spiritual worlds. And Hashem is the creator and the king over all of them. This is incredible if we really experience that in our heart. So that's the awe. The fear energy is now connected to Hashem, and that lifts it up and expands it from a disconnected, very constricted judgment energy now to be expanded. You feel that expansiveness of the greatness of Hashem, and you're in awe of how great Hashem is, and how you feel that greatness of Hashem in your heart. And that's already the sweetening of the judgment of Rosh Hashanah. And so this happens every day. To the extent that we go through this process every day, we will merit a fantastic day full of all of the blessings in the world, physical, spiritual blessings. But the source for that, for the whole year, the place where we draw the energy, the ability to succeed in this process every day of the year, is Rosh Hashanah. And so to the extent that we are lifting up this fear energy and experiencing it as an awe of Hashem, by celebrating Hashem as our king, then that's already the beginning of sweetening of this judgment energy. And then what happens is that Hashem has a tremendous pride. The pride that Hashem prides himself with us, his nation, is revealed, comes to a greater degree of expression. And that's Tiferet. So we're going from the sphere of Gevura, and we're moving through the spectrum, we're moving towards sweetening, the sweetness. We're sweetening the judgment. And when we move from the left side, the left sphere of Gevura, of judgment, we move towards the right, so we come to this sphere of Tiferet. And Tiferet is the sphere that represents the splendor of the king. What is the splendor? What is that which he prides himself with? That's the Jewish nation. And that's why Tiferet is also called Tiferet Yisrael, the pride of Yisrael. And the name Yisrael represents the sphere of Tiferet. And so that's why anyone, as we saw in Rabbi Nachman in this Torah, anyone who has the name Yisrael, even if he's considered a sinner of Yisrael, he's still included in this category. And Hashem prides himself with this person just because he exists. And so he is included in the tefillin of Hashem. And the tefillin, we all know that the tefillin are on top of the head, which is the place called the keter, the crown of the king, which is really interesting because Tiferet, the sphere of Tiferet, is connected to the stomach right here. The whole body of the person, the mid part of the person. You have the right hand is the chesed, the kindness. Left hand is the gevura. And the middle here is the Tiferet. And so to say that here, by the tefillin, whereas the place of the crown, the Keter, sphere of Keter, the crown of the king, why is that the place of the tefillin, that we know that tefillin is the pride of the king? Pe'ercha chavush alecha, the pasuk says. Your splendor is upon you. That's when you are wearing your tefillin. The tefillin is called pe'er. And the reason is Kabbalistically because the place of, I'm going to say something that's very Kabbalistic right now, and I don't think I need to really get into it, but the answer is that every world next to the world above it, it always stands at the midpoint of the world above it. So if you would imagine the chest by a person, if you have a very tall person and someone standing next to him, he's only up to his chest or up to his stomach, what's called a tiferet, that's where the world after is standing next to the world above. So every world next to the world above it is always at the midpoint of the world above it, at the tiferet of the world above it. And so that means that the keter of every world is positioned next to the tiferet of the world above it. Okay, and so that's the Kabbalist, according to Kabbalah, the answer why the tefillin is a place of the keter. It's the place of the crown. And so Rosh Hashanah is the crown of the whole year. It's the tefillin of the whole year. It's the time when we celebrate Hashem as our king, and it's the time when Hashem celebrates us as his nation. And to the extent that we include ourselves in this celebration, that's the extent that we will merit the sweetening of that judgment energy. It's expanded as an awe of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And then it transforms, it continues to transform and be sweetened and becomes this experience of Tiferet, the pride that Hashem prides himself with us, which is the aspect of tefillin. We know the Gemara says that in the tefillin of Hashem, it says, Mi ka'amecha ki Yisrael go yechad ba'aretz. Who is like your nation, Israel, a unique nation in all the land. And then the sweetening continues to happen. Within the celebration, it continues to happen. And it becomes chesed, the love. What is that love? What's the experience of the love? Rabbi Nachman says that on the day of celebrating the kingship of the king would feel so much happiness and joy and love towards his subjects, towards his nation, that whatever they wish for, they come and they share with him whatever they need, whatever they want, and he gives this to them. And so the other side of the coin, what happens is that through this process, now the king is showing his tremendous love to his nation, and whatever they wish for, he gives to them. And that's the process we're going through. And these are all included throughout the day of Rosh Hashanah, and they happen every morning as well, when we in the davening. And that's why you also see that this is also the kavanot in the shofar, for the shofar blowing on Rosh Hashanah, the kavanot that the Zohar speaks about. It goes through Yitzchak being sweetened by Yaakov. And there's also Avram that is included in the process of that sweetening. The sweetening of the judgment of Yitzchak. Yitzchak represents the judgment and the sphere of Gevurah, the fear that is sweetened when it's experienced as an awe of Hashem, and that's done with through Yaakov and through Abraham. And all of these three aspects are spoken about in the Zohar as the kavanot behind the shofar. And that's what we're going through also in the davening of Rosh Hashanah, the Malchiyot, accepting Hashem as our king, Zichronot, that we are remembered in front of him, we are brought in front of him. And what does that mean? That means that all that you need and all that you want and all that you wish for and all that you lack, and yourself, sometimes a person goes through life and it seems to him that he's forgotten. Well, that is sweetened and that's fixed and completed and healed through the process. That's the Zichronot, that after you accept Hashem as your king and you celebrate Hashem as your king, the Malchiyot, you have the experience of Zichronot. The experience of Zichronot is that now Hashem takes you you're brought in front of the king, in front of Hashem, and whatever, and you are remembered. You are remembered. All that you need, all the yeshuot, all the salvation, all the deliverance, all that you're seeking, you are remembered. And Hashem answers you, and Hashem gives it to you, just like the king gives to his subjects, to his nation. And the last part, the shofarot, is the mechanism that brings us in front of the king. The shofarot is, that's why it says, Bameh b'shofar. Through what? What causes this to happen, that we are brought in front of the king? That is the shofar. The shofar makes it so that when we are accepting the king as our king, it's not just accepting the king as our king at home. It's accepting Hashem as our king and celebrating Hashem as our king as it's done on the day of the coronation of the king, as it's done at the parade of celebrating the kingship of the king, as it's done with an experience that Rabbi Nachman says you can't compare the experience of seeing with the experience of just knowing. Knowing that there's a king is one thing, but seeing the king in front of you is a completely different experience, and that happens through the shofar. The shofar brings you in front of the king. And that's the idea of what is in the Mishnah there. Imru lefanai, say in front of me. The whole idea of speaking and experiencing this in front of the king. That's what Rosh Hashanah. That's what is happening on Rosh Hashanah, and that's what happens every day of the year as well. And how do we experience this every day of the year? How do we experience it on Rosh Hashanah? We experience it through the tzaddik of the generation. Every generation has a tzaddik. And throughout the generations, we had many, many tzaddikim. We had leaders, the spiritual leaders of the Jewish nation throughout the generations. And they are the ones who are able to bring in our hearts this experience, this understanding that we just spoke about. Okay, they are able to draw this awareness into our hearts so that we can connect to it, so that we can experience it and be included in the celebration of Hashem as our king. And that's why there's a big importance by the Hasidim. They used to always travel to the Rebbe, to the Rabbi, to the leader, to the spiritual leader, the tzaddik, on Rosh Hashanah specifically, because the tzaddik has this power to draw this, to bring us into the celebration that comes through understanding and experiencing in our hearts the kingship of Hashem. And that's why there's a big connection between Rosh Hashanah and Rosh Bnei Israel. Rebbe, the Rebbe is the acronym for the words Rosh Bnei Israel, the head, the leader, the spiritual leader of the Bnei Israel. And the Rosh Hashanah is the leader of the year. And like the Gemara teaches us that the whole year is drawn after, the Gemara teaches us the body of a person goes after the head of a person. And Gufa Bata Reisha Gerira, the body always follows halachically the head of a person. And so in the same way, the year follows the head of the year, and the nation follows the head of the nation. And so that's why the experience of Rosh Hashanah is drawn to us specifically through the Rosh Bnei Israel, the leader, the head, because it's all about our consciousness. It's all about really experiencing that, feeling it as if we're there, not just as if we're there, but actually experiencing that we are part of the celebration, celebrating the kingship of Hashem, and feeling what it means, the kingship of Hashem, experiencing it as if mamish, we're seeing it with our own eyes. And that's what the tzaddik brings to us. And when we experience this through the tzaddik, this is the light of the tzaddik that is we're able to connect to and is drawn to us, and we're able to see it and taste it and feel it. That light brings us this consciousness, this awareness, and then we are included in this sweetening that happens, the awe of Hashem and the love of Hashem. And so how can we come to that? So Rabbi Nachman explains to us in this Torah that we come to this light of the tzaddik. We can experience the light of the tzaddik when our mind, our higher consciousness, is freed from those forces that seek to block it. Those forces that seek to block it are the idol worshippers, the 70 nations of idol worshippers that surround Yerushalayim, they surround the Malchut, they surround the light of Hashem dwelling in this world, and they try to block it and they try to block its light, and they try to steal, they try to break it apart and steal its light. and break it apart into millions of different pieces and parts, and steal it for themselves, because it's the source of all energy for this world. It's the energy source of the whole universe, is the light of Hashem, which dwells within our world. And so they try to break it into tiny pieces and steal sparks of it for themselves and rename it. They try to rename it. They want to rename it so that it's no longer recognizable as the light of Hashem, as the kingship of Hashem. They want it to be their own kingship. They themselves want to be kings. They themselves want to be rulers of the world, instead of recognizing that Hashem is the only ruler, the only king in the whole universe. And so that is what causes the higher self, the higher consciousness of a person, to be blocked, to be constricted. And if it's constricted, if it's blocked, he can't experience the light of the tzaddik. He can't experience the awe of Hashem and the love of Hashem. And so how can we unblock it? We can unblock it by focusing on bringing the malchut to a state of perfection. Bringing the malchut to a state of perfection would be an experience where we are able to sit at the table and eat food, which is experiencing the pleasures of the physical world, but experiencing it as only in connection to Hashem. That it's only in order to nourish our higher self, not to nourish our animal desires, our animal urges, but to nourish our higher self in order to serve Hashem. So this is a table which is set before Hashem, just like the Mizbeach. And how can we come to that? How can we come to the state of perfecting, completing the Malchut of Hashem and experiencing the physical pleasures of this world, and only in connection, in the context of Hashem? That happens by returning all of those sparks of holiness that were stolen by the 70 nations. When we return those sparks of holiness that belong to the Mizbeach, that belong to Hashem, that were lost among the 70 nations, when we return those, then that will complete and perfect the Malchut, bring it to a state of Shlemut, perfection. And when that happens, then our consciousness, our higher consciousness, is freed, and we can experience the light of the tzaddik. Now, how can we bring those people, those sparks of holiness lost among those holy Jewish souls, lost among the 70 nations, back? Rabbi Nachman says through tzedakah. When we give charity, we cause that between us, the people giving the charity, and those people receiving the charity, wherever they are in the world, and even if they are in one place in the world, right? This is a point that I wanted to add, a point of clarity. Even if all of those souls that you have given charity to are in one place, in one room, imagine that. Imagine if they're all in one building. Still, Rabbi Nachman says that you are the more people you give charity to, the more you're increasing the field of love energy, of friendship energy. Because between you and each one of these people that you gave charity to, there is a field of love energy that is created. And so if you give the charity tzedakah to more people, then that field of love energy is expanded to those places as well. But what I'm saying now is that we must realize that even if all of those people you give charity to, even if it's 1 million people, and they are in one place physically, but the souls represent the spiritual energies of different places in the world. And so it could be all of these people are found in one place physically, but by giving the charity, the tzedakah, to 1 million people, it's as if now that those souls represent different points throughout the whole world, and that field of love energy is spread out throughout the whole world. And now, so if you give charity to one person who is a Torah scholar that has dedicated their life to learning Torah, to increasing Torah knowledge, to increasing divine consciousness, Hashem consciousness, Torah consciousness, then that's a soul that is a collective soul. We spoke about how he includes within him all the other souls. And so all of these other souls that are included in him, it's as if they received this charity that you gave to him, and then that field of love energy expands to that extent. And now that this expanded field of love energy fills the world, so the words of the Mordechai, the words of truth, the words that are denying and uprooting they are uprooting and they are contradicting and they are removing all of the corrupted belief systems, those words of truth that uproot and dissolve the sheker, the falsehood, all the corrupt belief systems. Those words are the words of the tzaddik, and those words now they can travel easily in this field throughout the world. They can travel easily because there's no more interference. The environment has been filled with this field of love energy, and so all of the interference, which Rabbi Nachman says interference, the interfering energy is the energy of hatred. All of that has been dissolved through the tzedakah, and now those words of truth are found and discovered even in the books of the other religions, so that people reading those books that have within them, they possess a Jewish soul, will recognize from those words, from that energy, from that light, they would recognize that they are found in such a disconnected place, in a place of falsehood, a place that of corrupted belief systems, a place that is not befitting their Jewish soul. And they will start to recognize their Jewish identity at the core. They will start to recognize that the lofty place that they come from, that they were Hashem. When Hashem created the world, the Medrash says that Hashem included the Jewish souls in the creation of the world. They are included in the creation of the world. Hashem consulted the Jewish souls in creating the world, right? Those are the ones that created the world with Hashem, and so they start to recognize their Jewish identity and the lofty place that they come from, and that allows them to be freed from the darkness that surrounds them and from that whole environment that they grew up in, and to find their way back to Judaism, find their way back to their home, to their soul's home, to their neshama's home, and that completes the Mizbeach, it completes the Malchut, and that brings about, now that the Malchut is completed and perfected, so our higher consciousness is freed and is expanded, and we are able to experience the light of the Tzaddik and be included in the celebration of Hashem as our King, which is celebrated and experienced as a tremendous awe of Hashem and a tremendous love of Hashem. And so that's what we are speaking about until now. Then now Rabbi Nachman is explaining to us this piece in the Gemara and how it represents all of these points in its Torah. That Rav Safra was telling over how one time he was traveling by a ship and he saw this fish that raised its head out of the water, and it had horns, that upon those horns were inscribed, it said, "I am the lightest creature in the sea, and I was 300 parsas long, and I went to the mouth of the Leviathan." And then that was the story. And then Rav Ashi said that this fish that you saw is the sea goat. And what it does is it stirs things up with its horns, and that's what it eats, right? We saw in the Rashbam. Rashbam explains, the commentary of the Rashbam explains that the vechisha, the words, it stirs things up. It digs in the sea with its horns in order to search for its sustenance, for what it eats. So that's, Rabbi Nachman spoke about how this fish represents the good, the Jewish souls that are lost among the 70 nations of idol worshippers, because we said that the Jewish people are compared to fish, and they are gathered just like the fish in order that they should be kosher to eat. They don't need anything, they don't need to be killed or slaughtered. Just by gathering them out of the sea, they are kosher for you to eat. And this is the aspect that we see by the Jewish souls, the Jewish souls among the nations that are being gathered. This is a word that the Torah uses. Their souls are being gathered. The nobles of the nations were gathered. Okay? And that's why the Chachamim, the Talmidei Chachamim, the Torah scholars are called Baalei Asupot, because they are gathering the good, these Jewish souls, back as the righteous converts. And then this fish, it took its head out of the sea. Apik Reshim Maya. So what does that mean? That means that, in other words, that it removes the higher consciousness from being drowned in the stormy waters. What are these stormy waters that want to drown the higher consciousness? Those stormy waters are the foolishness that we spoke about earlier in the Torah, that blinds a person from the light of the tzaddik. And that comes from the animal self. When the animal self is nourished through a person's food, because the person is eating out of those animal desires, so then that animal self overpowers the higher self, the spiritual self, the higher consciousness. And that's what's trying to drown the head of the fish. But the fish now, the righteous converts cause that the head, the consciousness, the higher consciousness, is able to go out of the water, come out of the water, meaning that it's no longer being drowned by those stormy waters, by that foolishness. And he had horns. The horns, the word for horns is karna. We said it's referring to the tzedakah, the charity, because the charity is called keren kayemet le'olam haba. It's keren kayemet le'olam haba. It means the capital which remains for the world to come. And charity is something that you're giving in this world, but you are saving it. Every dollar, every coin that you give to charity, to tzedakah, is money that you are saving in your spiritual bank account, in your bank account of the next world. So the capital is being saved for you for the world to come. And that's why it's called keren, karna. The word for the horn is the same word as charity, the keren. The same word for the keren, which is the word that represents the charity, the capital that is saved in the next world. And this charity is adding the friendly energy. It's increasing the friendly energy, as the pasuk in Mishlei says, "Hon Yosif Re'im Rabim," that wealth, charity, increases your friends. Because now you have bought yourself more friends, and that's the love energy that is increased through the money that you give to charity. And it's engraved on the horns. What does that mean? What does it mean? It's inscribed in the horns. Rabbi Nachman says, so through the tzedakah, this inscription is made. What's that? That's the aspect of that which is written, inscribed, the words of the Mordechai, which are inscribed, written, even though they're words, but they're so powerful, they're so effective, they make such a change in reality that they are compared to written words. And they are then found in the books of the other religions. And that's the aspect we saw from Esther. The Megillat Esther says, that his fame went out to all of the provinces. And that's the words of the Mordechai that are found now among all of the 70 nations in their books, in their religious books. And now they are found there by who? They're found by the Jewish souls, the sparks of good, and the sparks of holiness, the Jewish souls that are found among those idol worshippers. And they awaken them to return to Hashem. They awaken them to find their home, to return home. Because now the good, because now the good is remembering its true identity. And what's that? The true identity? That's what is inscribed in the horns. They find from what is inscribed and what is found in their religious books, they find their true identity. They remember their true identity. And that's why in the story, this is what engraved in the horns of the fish. What is it engraved in it? I am the lightest creature in the whole sea. Okay, so Rabbi Nachman says, "Haynu shani lemala mikol ha'olamot. Yam haynu hamem hu arba olamot. Yud hu bechinat hachokma shemitpashet bechol ha'olamot kemo shekatuv kulam bechokma asita. Vezehu beriya kala shebayam. Haynu shekemo she'adavar hakal hutzaf lemala, ken haneshama shehu atov hu lemala mikol ha'olamot." So he remembers that he is above all of the worlds. I'm higher than the whole universe. The Jewish soul remembers its true identity. What's its true identity? That it transcends the whole universe. It transcends space and time for sure, but all of the spiritual worlds as well. I am lighter. I'm the lightest creature in the whole Yam. What's the Yam represent? The Yam is made up of two letters, Yud Mem. Mem is a numerical value of 40. Okay, and 40 is 4 times 10. 4 times the 40 represents the 4 worlds, which are the 4 components which make up the whole universe. The whole universe, even though there are billions of worlds, different aspects and dimensions in the universe, but all of those are in these 4 categories, the worlds of Atzilut, Beriya, Yetzira, and Asiya. These are the 4 letters of Yud Kei Vav Kei. And they are 4 times 10 because in each one of them is split into subcategories, 10 subcategories, which are the 10 sefirot. And so the 40 represents the whole universe. And the Yud represents the spiritual aspect in the whole universe. The Yud is the Chokhmah, and it's the light of life of Hashem, which spreads throughout the whole universe and gives it life. All the 4 worlds of Atzilut, Beriya, Yetzira, and Asiya, this light of Chokhmah, of Yud, spreads within it and gives it life. And so Yam, the sea, represents the whole world, all the worlds, the billions of dimensions that are included in the whole universe, the physical aspects and the spiritual aspects. And I'm lighter, I'm the lightest creature in all of them. What does it mean I'm the lightest creature, says Rabbi Nachman? Just like something that is light, the lighter something is, the higher it will float, right? The thing that is lighter will always go to the top. And so if I'm the lightest, it means that I'm above all of the aspects in the universe, all of these worlds. I'm above all of them. Okay? But when Rabbi Nachman gives you these points, there's so much depth that's beyond, that it's hidden in his words. Just for example, what we just said right now, the fact that I am the lightest of the whole universe, and therefore I'm above everything, it's not just mashal, it's not just like a metaphor. Something that is lighter always goes to the top. Something that is lighter always goes to the top is because in the 4 elements in this physical world, the more dense and the more physical the element is, the lower it goes. The less physical and the less dense a element is, the more it will rise. And that's why the heat rises, the fire rises, the wind is higher than the water, and the water is above the earth. Okay, and so the letter of Yud is above the letter Hey, and the letter Hey is above the letter Vav, and the letter Vav is above the letter Hey. Okay, and so there's so much more to speak about this, but the fact that we recognize that these Jewish souls recognize their true identity is lighter than all of these worlds, that gives us a deeper understanding of why that is. It is because we are able to transcend all of these worlds. We are able to let go. We are able to release and surrender the connection of that density, of that what's called chomriut, that physicality. And that's what being lighter than them means. It means that you are beyond it. You are able to transcend it in your consciousness. And that's a characteristic of your soul, which transcends all of these worlds. Your soul comes from a higher place, from before all of the worlds. Like we said, your soul was Hashem was included our souls in creating all of these worlds. So it must be that we were there before these worlds were created. We already existed. And so that's what it means when it's inscribed, engraved on the horns of the fish. I am the lightest creature in the sea. It means I'm the highest, I'm above, and I transcend all of the worlds, which represent by the word Yam, the word which means the sea. V'avinan shin parsa, and I was 300 parsot long. דהיינו שהנשמה נזכרת שהייתה בבחינת ישראל עליו במחשבה תחילה, והקדוש ברוך הוא נמלך בה בבריאת העולם, בבחינת המה היוצרים יושבי נטעים עם המלך במלאכתו, שנמלך בנשמותיהם של ישראל בשעת בריאת העולם, דהיינו שנזכרת שהייתה במעלה גדולה כזו כנ"ל, ועתה היא הולכת לכיליון ויוצאת חס ושלום. So that means that the soul is remembering now that it was, in this aspect, it was once in the category of Yisrael was first in Hashem's intention, right? The first intention that Hashem had, the initial intention, the real reason why Hashem created the world is for the private presence of the Jewish nation. And so this Jewish soul remembers that, and it remembers that this soul was consulted, Hashem consulted with this soul in creating the world, right? And we spoke about that pasuk, Hema these are the architects, those who dwell in the fields together with the king in his work. And Hashem consulted with the souls of the Jewish nation when he created the world. And therefore, in other words, now this Jewish soul is remembering that it was on such a high level at its source, its core, its essence. And now, unfortunately, it was born into such a place, and because of that, it's being lost. Its significance is being eradicated among those 70 nations of idol worshippers. And so, what does the Shin represent? The 300, the Shin, זה בחינת המחשבה, שנחלקת לשלוש ראשים, מחשבות שכליות, מחשבות מידותיות, מחשבות מעשיות. The machshava of a person, the thoughts of a person. Rabbi Nachman now gives you a whole map of the consciousness of a person. He says the consciousness of a person, the thoughts of a person are split up into three parts, three types of thoughts, three types of using your thinking. Okay? One of them are machshavot sichliot, conceptual thoughts. Okay? One of them are machshavot midotiot, emotional thoughts. And then the third one is machshavot ma'asiyot, practical thoughts. And these represent the three parts of the 10 sefirot. Every world of 10 sefirot is split up into three parts. There's the Chabad. Chabad is the acronym for Chochmah Bina Dat, which are representing the machshavot sichliot, as Rabbi Nachman calls them here, the conceptual ideas, thinking. And then there is the Chagat, which are the acronym for Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, and that represents the part of consciousness, the emotional thoughts. And then there is the Nahi, the acronym for Netzach Hod Yesod, which represent the practical thoughts. Thinking in a practical way. How can I apply what I know conceptually and what I know and I feel emotionally in my heart? How can I apply that practically? Okay, and so these are the three parts of our thoughts. And so the Shin 300 represents the three types of thinking. Each one of them is 100 because it's 10 sefirot of 10, and so that's the 300 here. Parsa, the 300 parsa, we said, is a measurement, is like, let's say, a mile. What does that represent here? Parsa, the word parsa itself, the literal translation of the word, it alludes to, has a similar letters. It sounds like the word for in Hebrew, in Lashon HaKodesh, for the foot. Okay, parsa is a foot. That's a little translation of the word. So, what is that representing here? Bechinat regel, haynu etza kemo v'chol ha'am asher bereglecha, הנמשכים אחר עצתך, היינו שהנשמה נזכרת שהייתה תחילה במחשבה, ובה נמלך ונתייעץ בבריאת עולמו. And so, parsa is the foot, and the foot alludes to consulting. Okay, why? There's a pasuk in Shemot that says about Moshe, the nation that is who are at your feet. The nation who are at your feet, Rashi explains, what does it mean, the nation who are at your feet? They are the nation who follow your advice. Okay, so the nation at your feet are the nation that follow your advice. Why is that? What's the connection between advice, following advice, consulting with, and feet? So as we just spoke right now, we said that in the thinking, the three types of thoughts, and the bottom three sfirot, the Netzach Hod Yesod, are called the feet. Literally, the feet of a person represent the Netzach and Hod of the sfirot. Okay, and so the feet sfirot are the sfirot that represent the practical application of the conceptual knowledge and the emotional knowledge, the conceptual intelligence and the emotional intelligence of a person. How do I apply that practically? That's the feet. Okay, and so that is all about consulting with, practically, the leader. Guide me. How do I live my life? Do I go this way or do I go that way? And so that's why the nation who are at your feet are the nation that follow your advice. Okay, and so this Jewish soul remembers that it was consulted by Hashem in creating the world, creating the universe, which is unbelievable. A person can't even, we can't even accept this. It's unbelievable to even think about it, that Hashem consulted our souls, just like a nation at your feet is the nation that follows your advice. Hashem consulted our souls in creating the world. Okay, but that's what it remembers now. This Jewish soul is remembering this, that it was consulted and Hashem took advice from it when creating the world. And now, Azelna lepuma de Leviathan, and it's crying, it's saying that now I'm going to the mouth of the Leviathan. What does that mean? I'm going, Hainu lechilayon behefsed, chas v'shalom. It means that it realizes that now it's going to loss, it's being channeled in the gutters. Its energy, its life, its purpose, it's such a lofty source, such a lofty purpose is now being wasted. Okay? It's going to the mouth of Leviathan, it's being lost, it's being wasted. And in this manner, this results in, it causes for this soul to be compassionate towards itself, to take pity on its lowly place, on its disconnected place, and to be awakened to return to her source, to return to Hashem. And this results in the Bali Tshuva and the people that return to fulfilling the Torah and the mitzvot. Even if they were born Jewish, they may have been lost along the way. And now this causes them to awaken, return to their home, return to their source, return to Hashem, return to the Torah. And it also causes those righteous converts, those Jewish souls, to convert back to Judaism. Amar Ravashi says, "Ha'iza diyama demchisha ve'id kalma." This is the sea goat which stirs things up and has horns. Iza, the goat, says Rabbi Nachman, the same word for Iza, goat, is the same word for Oz. Oz, we said it means power, but in this Torah specifically, Rabbi Nachman many times used the word Oz to describe the energy of awe, power, awe, the power of the king, the glory, the splendor of the king. That's the awe, the feeling of awe of the king's greatness, and that's the aspect of Oz, the power. Okay, so this is the aspect of Oz, the fear, the awe of the king, the awe of Hashem, which is represented in the pasuk that says, "You are the splendor of their might, the splendor of their power." Tiferet, the splendor, we're speaking about that feeling, we're speaking about the pride that Hashem prides himself with the Jewish nation, who are those that royal clothing, that entourage that the king is being surrounded with in the celebration of his kingship. That's the Jewish nation. That's the splendor of the king. That's the might of the king. The power of the king is revealed through this. The might of the king is revealed through this. The experience that comes from that being revealed is awe. Tiferet uzamu ata. You are the splendor of their might, as we spoke about before. The bechisha that stirs things up. What is that referring to? Haynu bechinat tzaddik shemechapes tamid achar ha'itparut shebechol echad miYisrael. Who is the one that stirs things up? That's the tzaddik that is always stirring things up. What does it mean he's stirring things up? He's always seeking and searching to bring to the surface of our awareness the tremendous pride that Hashem prides himself with each Jew individually. Okay, and so that stirs things up. Who stirs things up here? It's the tzaddik that's stirring up, bringing to our awareness and our consciousness the pride that Hashem is priding himself with his Jewish soul individually. Ve'it karna היינו בחינת ברצונך תרום קרננו, היינו האהבה שנתגלה על ידי הצדיק, על ידי כל בחינות הנע נתגלה אור הצדיק, שעל ידי זה זוכים ליראה ואהבה כנאה. And finally, Ravashi says that this sea goat that stirs things up has horns. What are the horns? Rabbi Nachman here says that the horns are referring to the love that Hashem loves us, that is revealed through the tzaddik, as it says in the pasuk, "Virtzonecha tarum karneinu." Okay, we're speaking to Hashem, we're praying to Hashem, we're saying that Hashem, with your will, your tremendous love for us, and your will, you love us so much, and you're so happy with us, you pride yourself with us, and you have so much love towards us, you will lift up our stature. Okay, that's what it means. With your will, tarum karanenu, you will lift up our state, our stature. Okay, so that's what it means here. Ve'it karna, and it has a stature, it has a lifted state, an elevated state. Okay, and that happens through the tzaddik, when he reveals to us this love that Hashem loves us. And through this love that Hashem loves us, Hashem lifts us up. He lifts up our stature. Because through all of these aspects that we spoke about, up until now, we just went through the whole formula, the light of the tzaddik is revealed. And when the light of the tzaddik is revealed, the awe of Hashem and the love of Hashem is revealed to us and experienced by us as well. And so that concludes Ot Chet, part 8 in this Torah, and we'll see the next part, Bezrat Hashem, in the next year.